Hi, I'm Jerry from Dr. J's Restoration RX in Lebanon, Oregon. And on behalf of the filling station, Chevrolet and GMC Quality Reproduction Parts, I'm happy to bring you this first in a series of videos in order to help you avoid some of the pitfalls of your current restoration project. In this video, I'm going to be restoring the door hinges of this 1952 Chevrolet pickup. When I'm done, I'll only have a few dollars invested and some of my time. This is a far cry from what it costs to put new reproduction door hinges on this door at about $150 a pair. Our friends Bruce and Holly DeRamus of B&H Electrical in Albany, Oregon have allowed me to use their truck to demonstrate this procedure. So let's get started. A good indication of hinges that need to be rebuilt is the door alignment itself. A lot of times you can take a look at the door gaps on the top and back sides of the doors to see if the gaps are even here or if the door seems to be slanted towards the back. That can be a door hinge adjustment, or it can be the door hinges themselves that need to be repaired. And 9 times out of 10, it probably is a door hinge problem. On a truck of this age, chances are it's never been serviced, so it's a good idea just to get into it, pull the door off, pull the hinge apart, and check it out and make sure it's all nice and tight. And you're going to pretty much find that they are generally either loose or broken. And that's the time to go ahead and take the pins out and rebuild the whole hinge. Another way to tell is when you open the door, if you see the bottom of the door latch contacting the bottom of the door striker, and this one you can actually hear it. I can see the door moving up as I try to close it. That can be a loose hinge, or it can also be an adjustment. One way to tell if your hinges are loose is to open your door, grab the bottom, and pull up and down on the door to see if you get any movement in the hinge pivot area. If you're seeing movement there, chances are you've got a problem in the hinge and you need to get into it and get it repaired. And that's what we're going to do at this point. We're going to go ahead and pull this door off, get these hinges out of the body, pull them all apart, and just put new pins in them, get new springs in them, just do the whole thing, sandblasting and everything. We'll make these hinges like brand new, and just for, you know, under $20 is probably what we're going to invest in this. So let's get started on that right now. The first thing I need to do in order to service the hinges is to remove the door from the body. And in order to do that, I need to remove these handles, the door panel, and this lower panel, which will expose the 3 bolts on each of these hinges and allow me to pull the door off the body. That's what I'm going to do right now. Now that I have all the bolts out of the door, I can go ahead and remove the door. On some doors, when you pull all the bolts off of the hinges like this, you need to support the back side of the door or the complete door itself so the door just doesn't fall off when you remove the bolts. On this particular truck, these hinge bars are in pockets, upper and lower, which holds it in place pretty darn solid even without the bolts in it. So now all I have to do is remove the door by sliding it off those hinge bars and put the door aside. Now that I have the door off the body, the hinge problem becomes pretty apparent. This hinge is only being held by part of the pin, and I can tell that the bottom side of this pin is actually sheared off. So this is our big issue with this particular door, is this upper hinge. The bottom hinge is not too bad, but being as we've got it already apart, this is the time to do both hinges. So I'll pull both of these hinges out of the body. We'll rebuild both of them like new and put them back in. Don't have to worry about it again for a long time. Now it's time to remove both of the hinges. Well, I finally got the hinge out of the door, or out of the body, and it was kind of an unusual situation. I've never seen this happen before, but what had happened is the hinge pin that was here actually rode up to the point where I couldn't get it out of the opening in the body. So what I ended up having to do is take my little air saw and cut the top of this pin off, because there's no way that that thing was going to slide out of that bar. So now what I've got to do is drive that pin out of this bar and drill everything out for the bigger size pin, insert the new pin. This also has springs in it that are worn, so we'll go through the procedure to restore the hole that those go into, and then we'll put new springs in it as well. The upper hinge is the only hinge on this truck that uses the hold open springs, so that's something that's good to know. These are definitely worn out. This one could probably be reused, but they're like 10 or 12 bucks a pair to get new ones, and it's just worth replacing them. What happens is the hole that this spring goes into in the bar gets worn out and it gets sloppy like this. That shouldn't be sloppy. So what I'll probably end up doing is welding up that hole, just plug welding that hole up and re-drilling it to the size for the spring to be nice and snug in there. Put the new springs in top and bottom. The bottom one was missing completely. So I'll put the new springs in top and bottom, put everything back together after it's sandblasted and all cleaned up, lube it up a little bit, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the lower hinge from the body. And there we have it. The lower hinge doesn't look too awfully bad. Looks like it's actually in pretty good shape, but again, being as we've got everything else apart, we're going to go ahead and pull this pin out of here and put new pins in it, or new pins in both of them. Sandblast everything up, paint it up so it looks brand new. We'll be in good shape. What I've got here is the upper hinge assembly from the driver's door of the 52 Chevy pickup. And what I wanted to show you is kind of how these hinge springs work to hold the door open. Basically what happens is when you open the door, these springs pinch in a way to where it will hold the door open. It kind of pinches in the open position. And when you get it past the center point, the high point, then the springs let loose and it will let the door close easily. Normally there are two of these springs in this hinge assembly, and there's one on each side. Right now there's only one in this hinge, and it's pretty common when you pull these things apart to see that one or even both of these are missing. And in this particular one, we still have one spring in there, so I was able to show you how this works. The next step we need to do is to get this hinge pin, the original hinge pin, out of the bar assembly. Now, in these early years, the trucks did not use bushings in the hinges like the later years did. So what they did is they drilled this out, they put the pin through, and then the head had a knurling around it that when set into this area here would hold the pin in place. And on this particular hinge, what happened is that got loose, came out, the knurling let loose, and the pin raised up to where I couldn't get the thing out of the truck door. So what happens most of the time is the pin in the internal bore of this thing rust to the hinge bar itself. And even trying to drift it out cold, normally you can't get them out cold. You have to heat this up to kind of loosen that rust inside the bore. And then once you get it hot enough, you drift this out, and normally you can get those pins out. I have had an occasion where I've had to drill these things completely out because it was so rusted into place that it just would not come out. Hopefully in this case we'll be able to drift this thing out. And once I get that pin out of here, I'll pull it apart, and then you can see what the whole thing looks like exploded. So now we're going to go ahead and drift the pin out. And it's moved now, so it should come the rest of the way out. Okay. Now that the pin is out, we'll go ahead and let this thing cool off. Then I'll pull the entire assembly apart, and I'll show you all the different pieces and show you how it goes back together and what we're going to have to do to get it restored back to the way it needs to be. Now that I've let the hinge cool long enough, I can handle it with gloves. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this apart. With the pin out, it's pretty easy to pull this apart. It should pretty much fall apart. The only thing that kind of gets in your way sometimes is the little spring clip. But once you get it out of the way, and here's the spring clip, that's what it looks like. It's got a prong going either way. And this hinge can pretty much just come apart like this. So now what we have to do is get this bore drilled to the bigger size. We'll get these holes drilled to the bigger size, and we'll go to the size that's just under the knurling. If you get it too big, the knurling won't grab into these holes here and hold itself in place, and that's the whole thing that happened with this hinge before, is the knurling let loose and it allowed the pin to raise up, and consequently I couldn't get the thing out of the body until I cut the head off. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and do that now and see how things go. Now that these pieces are apart, I can go ahead and re-drill the bore of both the hinge bar and the pocket to the size that's just a little bit over the size of the pin, the diameter of the pin. Our pin is about 340 thousandths diameter under the knurling of the head, so I'm going to drill it at about 343, which is an 11/32 drill bit. So I'll go ahead and drill these. We'll get everything lined up, make sure it's all going to fit properly. And then the next thing I need to do is deal with these holes where the springs go. The one on this side is actually pretty tight. That spring must have fallen out a long time ago, and so it's not too badly worn, but the other one on the other side you can tell is fairly worn. So probably what I'll do is I'll sandblast this real well, get inside that hole as well as I can, and then plug weld that up, grind it off flat, and then re-drill it so that it's tight on the new spring. And that's where we'll go from here. I just plug welded the original hole that was in this hinge bar and ground it off flat. Now what I'll do is I'll center punch it to the same dimension that this hole is on the other side, and then I'll drill it with a 15/64 drill bit, which is the size that this original hole was. You can see it fits right in there. Once I get that done, I can paint everything up and reassemble the hinge. Now I've got the new hole drilled in here with my 15/64 bit, and we're ready to paint this guy up, all the parts, and reassemble. Now that everything's been sandblasted and painted, we're ready for reassembly on the hinges, but there are a couple things that you need to know before we go through this reassembly procedure. One is we need to put anti-seize on the pin and through the bore of the hinge bar, and that will circumvent any problems for the next time if this ever has to be pulled apart again. The other thing is the springs that go into the top hinge. You need to know that there are lefts and rights on these, and if you get them in the wrong position, reversed, that you'll never get this thing in properly. So we want to make sure that we get those in the proper way and that we've got the NICs on the pin and the bore, and then we're ready for reassembly. Okay, the first thing we'll do is put the NICs on the pin and the hinge bar. So it just takes a little bit. We'll just rub some on the shaft of the pin. You don't really need it on the knurling, so we get a little bit there. And then for the bore of the hinge bar, I like to use these little applicators. They're foam tipped applicators. Goes really good inside the bore. So we'll just take and put a little bit on that and run it through the bore here to get some NICs there. And you can run it inside the spring bores as well. Just a little bit in there. And then we're ready to reassemble the hinge, but we got to make sure that the springs are in the proper place, which I know they are now. I've got the lefts and rights in their proper place. So I'll show you how to get these in and in the proper position for reassembly. Now we're going to reassemble the hinge. So what I'll do is I'll put the hinge bar into the hinge pocket, lift it a little bit, put the spring in the hole of the hinge bar, and then work it down into this oblong hole of the hinge pocket. Do the same for the other side, like so. Now, when you get these springs left and right positioned properly, your spring hinge assembly is going to look like this. If the springs are down the other way, you'll know that that's not going to be right, and you won't ever be able to get it together properly. When they are in the right position, this bar and the pocket are going to line up perfectly without struggling with it. You'll be able to get this pin down through here. And once you get that pin in place and it locks into this knurling right here, you're basically done. One of the things that I'd done before we started this is the pins that we get for these hinges are not only oversized, but they're longer than what you need. So what I did is before we started, I cut this pin that was actually this size. I just took it and cut it a little bit long and then tapered the end of it so that when you do drive it down through the hinge pocket, it'll go through with very little effort. And then once you get it in there, you get it into the knurling, tap it down nice and tight to where the head is flush with the pocket. You're done. Here's a better view of the assembled hinge. What you're going to see when everything's assembled properly with these springs is it kind of looks like a ram's horn here, where the springs are protruding up above the hinge bar like this. If you reverse these springs and try to put them in that way, the hinge springs are going to be down inside the pocket here. So you'll know that that's incorrect. But when you get them correct, the rights and lefts, this is exactly how it should look. And then we're going to drive this pin in. Now I'm going to go ahead and drive the pin in up past the knurling so the knurling locks into the top of the hinge pocket. We've got it nice and close now, and it's locked in. So when your hinge is in position, what you're going to see is you will be able to get it over center like that. And that's how your springs hold your door open. It's really tight, but when everything's in the proper position, that's how it works. Now that we've got the upper hinge reassembled, it's ready to be reinstalled into the body of the truck. Doing the lower hinge is basically the same as doing this upper hinge. It's actually easier because you don't have to deal with these hold open springs. So when you put it back together, just drive the pin through, make sure everything's positioned properly, And once you get that back together, it's ready to reinstall into the body as well. So right now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and install this into the body of the truck, and then from there it's just putting the door back on and realigning the door, and we're ready to go. Now we're ready to reinstall the hinge, but there's a couple of things you need to do before you reinstall this hinge. One of the things you need to do is to chase the threads with the 3/8 24 tap. In this particular truck, that's the size that we're dealing with. Just run the tap in and out so you clean out all the threads. The other thing you need to do is to take your bolts and run them on a wire brush so that you clean the threads. Unless you're using new bolts, you'll definitely want to do that. That'll make the installation procedure a lot easier. So at this point, the only thing you need to remember on the top hinge is to have the hinge in the open position. Otherwise, if you have it in the closed position where the door would normally be closed, these springs are going to protrude so far that you won't be able to get them into this pocket. Right now, they're in a position where it'll fall right into the pocket and you'll be able to bolt these in. So basically all you do is you run it in there, take your bolts, thread them in. They thread in nice and easily, being as I've chased the threads and cleaned the threads on the bolts. And one thing you'll notice is there is some up and down adjustment on these hinges. That allows you to get the door in the proper position once you get this all bolted together and in place. So at this point right now, we'll go ahead and just tighten these up, just so that we can reinstall the door, and then we'll adjust the door at a later point. So that's it. The hinge is in place. You'll notice it's spring loaded now. And we'll do the same to the bottom hinge. Once we get those done, we're ready to put the door back on. So that's it for rebuilding the hinges on this 52 Chev pickup. If you don't feel that you want to tackle this on your own, you can always get in touch with me at the address below. Just email me and I can give you current pricing for rebuilding the hinges. You just need to send them to me and I can take care of it for you. I'll have them ready for you to reinstall. And if you do feel like doing it, I hope this video has helped you get a little insight into the procedure. And if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to email me and ask me any questions that you need to. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.